So in this example here, we're going to use elimination to solve. And what we see is a couple things. We see that we have lots of fractional coefficients, right? These numbers in front are fractions. And we may as well try and get rid of those. It's not pleasant to deal with fractions in elimination, usually. Students don't like adding or subtracting fractions, so we could just take the first step to eliminate fractions. The other thing is that these terms are lined up vertically. The y terms are also lined up vertically, but these constant terms aren't lined up. The equal sign isn't lined up, okay? So these are a bit out of order. So the first thing you might want to do before even multiplying is rearrange the equations so that they're the same. So I'm going to do this. You don't have to recopy. You can just erase if you are using pencil. But we're just going to put the constant on the other side of the equation so that they line up. All right? So that's a good thing to do because we've been used to adding in vertical columns, and I would suggest that. So now let's get rid of the fractions. And how do we do that? We look at the denominators and we find the lowest common multiple. We multiply every term by that lowest common multiple of those denominators. In this case, it's what? 6. Good job. Okay, so I'm going to write the new equations over on the right side here a little bit. And so 6 times 2 over 3, let's do the 6 over 3 first. 6 divided by 3, 2 times 2x is 4x. 6 times negative 1/2 is, of course, 3y, so minus 3y, equals 6 times 4, 24. Okay, is everyone good with that? We'll do the same thing over here. We look at these denominators. What's the lowest common multiple between 2 and 4? It is 4, yeah. Good job. Now, if you did 4 times 2 is 8 and you multiply by 8, that's totally fine as well. Just going to be some bigger numbers, okay, for you to deal with later, but that's okay. Lowest common multiple is usually the most straightforward. So 4 times 1/2 x, that would be 2x. 4 times 1 over 4, that's 1, y, so just 2x plus y. And then 4 times 5 over 2 is 10. 4 over 2 is 2 times 5 is 10. Or 4 times 5 is 20, divided by 2 is 10. However you want to do that. Okay, so we have those two equations. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, now we have whole numbers, a little bit easier to deal with. I'm looking now at the variable terms, and I have a couple options. You could eliminate the x. What would I have? Which equation would I multiply to get rid of the x, and what would I multiply it by? So let me know where you're at here. Does anyone know which equation I would have to multiply a number by, and what number would that be to eliminate the x's? Any ideas? Yeah?
The second equation by -2.
The second equation by -2. Exactly. That will give us a -4x, and we could eliminate the x's. Okay, and we might do that, but what about the y's? What could we multiply, and which equation would we multiply to eliminate y's? We have a -3 here, and we have a +1. Sorry? The second one by? Okay, the second one by -1, that would make us a -1y, and we actually want a +3 down here. So the second one by 3. Very good. Okay. So either one. You could do either one of those, and you would eliminate one of the variable terms. So which one do you want to do? Let's get rid of the y's, okay? So I'll multiply this by 3. So that's going to be 6x plus 3y equals 30. So that 3 is multiplied by each term in the equation. Okay? So you could get rid of the x if you wanted to, like our first suggestion, but I just chose the other one. All right. All right, so now we get to add these equations, right? Because what we've determined is that when we add these two terms, we're going to get 0 here, right? So we add these up. 4x plus 6x is 10x. -3y plus 3y is 0y. Bless you. And so we don't have any term here. Equals, you drop that equal sign down because it's in the right in vertical column. And 24 plus 30 is 54. So we divide by 10. And I'll let you use decimals here, I guess, or decimals, fractions, whatever. So that's 5.4. Okay, fraction would be what? Can we half 54? It would be 27 over 5. Okay, so we'll use. I'll show both here. Okay, so that's the x value. Okay, and now I need to find the y value. Okay, so I'm going to plug x in here, and the question doesn't say whether the answers need to be in fraction form, but if you're using decimals, you can just use your calculator. If you're using fractions, though, you might be able to use your calculator, but it might take just a little bit more work. So let's practice with the fractions. I'm going to use the fraction here. So x, all right, so let's just pick one. Doesn't really matter which one. I'm going to use the second one. So 1/2 times 27 over 5 plus 1/4 y equals 5 over 2. Now, could you use these equations? Yes, you could. You could use those equations. I always suggest you go back to the original equations, and that's because what if you've done something wrong here to get to these equations? You see that? If you've multiplied one thing wrong, and you go back and you check yourself with your incorrect math already, you might seem like you have the right answer when you have the wrong answer. Because if you've made a mistake already, you know what I mean? It might... anyway, so I always suggest going back to the original equations so that you know for sure if you have made a mistake here. So that's why I'm doing this. Okay, so what do we have? We have 27 over 10 plus 1/4 y equals 5 over 2. Okay, so we're going to get the y by itself. So I'm going to do 5 over 2 minus 27 over 10. We're going to subtract this off, right, to the other side. When we subtract fractions, we need a what? A common denominator. So this bottom number needs to be the same. So I'm going to multiply the bottom times 5 to get 10, and I have to multiply the top times 5 to get 25. Does that make sense? So this is working with fractions, which I know we all need practice with. 25 minus 27 is negative 2 over 10. Or negative 1/5, doesn't matter, we'll simplify that later. And then how do I get rid of the 1/4 here? What can I do? I can divide by 1/4, which is the same as what? If you divide by 1/4, it's the same as flipping and multiplying. Okay, cross multiplying. Yeah, you can cross multiply as well. If you are dividing by a fraction, so if I want to divide by 1/4, that's the same as multiplying by 4 over 1. You just flip and multiply. You remember hearing about that? Flip and multiply. Okay? When you're dividing by a fraction, you just flip and multiply. Sounds bad. Anyway, so let's multiply everything by 4 here. And then what do we get? Y equals negative 8 over 10, which when simplified is what? Negative 4/5. Okay. All right. So I'm just looking in your textbook. Example 2 is the one we're doing, and yeah, they've got the decimals there in your textbook. And so 5.4 was correct, and this one is like negative 0.8. So I'll save the check for this example. You should check those answers, but x is going to be equal to 27 over 5, and y is going to be equal to negative 4 over 5. Or the point 27 over 5, comma, negative 4 over 5. Okay, so those are your answers, and they do check out. Any questions about that? That's a little bit of a trickier example, but that's how you work with fractions and doing elimination.